All right. Good evening, Vietnam. Live from LZ Bunker. This is a Veterans Live show. I'm Ronnie Embers, served with the 101st Airborne Division from December 1967 to December 1968. And today's guest is Staff Sergeant Warren Gallion from the 4th Infantry Division. Sergeant Gallion deployed to Vietnam in 1969. He served with the Mechanized Infantry Division as well as LRRPs. For those of you who are not familiar with the LRRPs, they're small, well-armed reconnaissance patrols that go deep into enemy-held territory. He has some interesting stories to tell you, including different missions about tigers, and we'll get to him in just a moment, but first we'll do our Vietnam War timeline segment. Okay, this date in October 14th of 1966. United States Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara, in a memorandum, said that the communist forces was suffering 60,000 killed per year. Yet there is no sign of an impending break in enemy morale, and it appears that he can no more replace his losses by infiltration from the north and recruitment in the south. McNamara continued, enemy forces are larger, terrorism and sabotage, especially in scope and intensity for that. But more railroads and highways have been cut. The rice crop has shrunken, and we control little more, if any, of the population. In the countryside, the enemy almost always controls the night. The #1 song in 1966 on this date was, come on, Four Tops, name it. Reach Out, I'll Be There. Okay. October 14th of 1967, Operation Medina was a search and destroy mission by the United States Marine Corps, 3rd Marine Division in the Hai Long District. The operation resulted in 50 PAVN killed and 3 captured, but 34 Marines were killed. Sad day. The #1 song in October 1967 was my favorite song of all time over there, The Letter by the Box Tops. And I'm not putting that in there, but I love that song. Okay, now our photo segment with photos you all sent us in from the Vietnam Veterans Photo Club on Facebook. So let's go do the photos. All right, let's have photo #1. Okay, this is from Dennis Llewellyn. It's Tim Pimlott holding a tail of an NVA mortar. Very close there. In 1967, 1968 in the Central Highlands, from the 1st to the 12th Infantry, 4th ID, Company D. Okay, so that was exploded already. I'm glad he wasn't holding a live one. Next photograph is from Craig Latham. All of his photographs were stolen, he says, after I came home from Vietnam. He had almost 2,000 of them, mainly because he was a combat writer and combat photographer with the 101st Airborne Division, 501st Infantry. The only way I have any now is they were published in the papers with my name on them as a byline. He would appreciate it if any of you sees any of these with his name on it to get in touch with him somehow. He would appreciate seeing them. This was from April 1971, Fire Base Brick. Members of the 2nd 501st Infantry were on their way to help their brothers from their battalion fighting in the jungles. Okay, the next photograph is from Stephen Novikov, writing a letter to his mom and dad from Cam Ranh Bay in Vietnam in August 1970. Cam Ranh Bay was, I believe, where most of the troops from Vietnam went into. And this photo is from Jim Hollis. He's in the bed with Company B, 1st to the 26th Big Red 1, 1st Infantry Division, taken on April 25th, 1968. Thank you, Jim. That was my 20th birthday. I appreciate it. I was still in country then. He was taken in Benoit after surgery by Fess Parker's crew. That's Fess Parker there standing on the left, the old Davy Crocker guy when we were kids. I remember that every Sunday night at 7 o'clock. Great photographs. Thank you. Next photograph is from Dean Losey, Lance Corporal Marine Corps, Earl Dean Losey, near Hue, Vietnam, July 1972. Subunit 1, 1st Enzer field operator attached to the Vietnamese Marines in the Spring Offensive of 1972. Thank you all for all those photographs. Keep sending them in. You can send them to Vietnam Veterans Photo Club. There's a special place in front of on the top of the page to send your photos to. Okay. I'm going to bring a special guest in here, Staff Sergeant Warren Gallion of the 4th Infantry Division, Vietnam, 1969. Good evening, Warren.
Good evening, Warren.
Oh boy. Warren, can you hear us?
No.
Warren, can you hear us now? Oh boy.
Okay, tell him 1 moment.
1 minute, please, Warren. Technical difficulties.
Check.
I hear you.
Yes, we're good.
That's it? There you go, brother. Okay. So tell us about your little bio. Give us your bio.
Well, to start with, I ended up growing up in a military family. My dad was a career soldier. He started his Army career at Fort Schaffner in Hawaii, and he was there when Pearl Harbor was attacked, and he ended up being an incredible witness as he was on guard duty at the Officers Club there at Fort Schaffner, where he could watch the planes dive in. For myself, I never really had any dreams of wanting to be in the military. When I got out of high school, I started college. I was a poor student at best. There was a joke going around at the time that said I only made 1A in my first 2 years of college. And unfortunately, it was on my draft card. And that was about to be true for me. So I volunteered for the draft. Since my dad had been an Army recruiter, I knew a little bit of how the inside worked. I knew I'd only have to be in the Army for 2 years instead of 3. So I went down to the draft board and told them if they'd draft me and I could actually get an early out to get back into college, I thought I could get through with less than 2 years of service. And they obliged me. And the next thing I knew, I was doing basic training at Fort Bliss. I was hoping that I was going to be a finance clerk in Germany, but they told me I was going to be an 11 Bravo, sent me to Fort Polk, Louisiana to infantry school.
Okay, tell us about what happened there at NCO school. Why did you go to NCO school, though?
Well, at the end of Fort Polk, they said that they'd introduced a new concept that the Army had never done before, and they've never done since. But it was right during the Vietnam War. They were having a problem with they could draft all the privates they needed, but they were running short of middle management and sergeants at that time. So they started what was called an NCO school, and so they asked if I would be a part of that, and so I did become an NCOC. They sent us to Fort Benning, Georgia. We went through some training, came out as a E5 sergeant, and then was sent to Vietnam. A lot of people are surprised.
Wait a second, wait. Don't pass over what they used to call you guys.
Yeah, after we got to Vietnam, most people with my rank had as many years in the service as I had months. And most of the draftees that I went into the Army with, that were already over there, felt like that their 3 or 4 months of experience on me was probably more important than the training that I'd received at Fort Benning. So we didn't get a lot of respect, but they called us instant sergeants and shake and bake sergeants.
I have not heard the word shake and bake in, I can't remember when. Instant sergeants, right? How long was that school? A month?
Well, I think it was 12 weeks that we had to go.
Wow. Okay.
And after we finished the school, they sent us back to go through infantry school again as a squad leader. And so I went through infantry school a second time at Fort Lewis, Washington.
There you go.
I give a shout out to all the NCOs, NCOC guys. Even though people didn't always say the nicest things about us and thought maybe the Army was doing the wrong thing by creating this school, there was about 26,000 of us.
That's okay, man. You served, and that's all that mattered. Thank you very much.
And over about 1,100 of their names are now on the wall there.
Really? Wow. Out of 26,000. Wow, that's a lot.
None of us were killed over there.
That's a lot. Okay, tell us, what other units did you serve in beside the 4th?
Well, as soon as all my tour in Vietnam was with the 4th Infantry Division. But when I first sent me over there, my first 4 months, I was with the mechanized infantry. So I was with 2nd Battalion, 8th Infantry, A Company of the 4th Infantry Division. And then I did 6 months with the 4th Division, 2nd Brigade LRRPs. And at the end of the 6 months, I ended up going back for my last 2 months in Vietnam with my mechanized unit with the 2nd and the 8th.
Gotcha. Okay. Tell us about in military operations what reconnaissance and scouting is doing. Like what a LRRP team is, the LLRP that you were part of.
Since I've been back and done some research, I found out there's a lot of different definitions of LRRPs. But the brigade LRRPs that we were in, we always went out on 4-man teams. We did have one team that actually would go out as a 3-man team. But I always liked the 4th guy along with us. And we even had one that would actually go out on occasion wearing black pajamas instead of wearing an Army uniform. But our main job was to go out, that we'd be left for 4 or 5 days, 4 or 5 nights out in the jungle. They would normally give us about 4 square kilometers. That would be our area of operation. And S2 would end up telling us what they thought might be going on in the area, let us get all the information we needed. I was allowed to fly over the area and see it from the air and pick out landing zones and that type stuff from the area. And then I would train my team and we would prepare my team, and we would go out and spend the 4 or 5 days watching trails, trying to gather information, and hopefully, provide information to the larger units back.
How'd you get your resupplies for food?
Well, we had to carry everything for 4 or 5 days with us at the time. So, and you've heard of LRRP rations, and it was kind of nice. We didn't have to carry those cans. The LRRP rations were a lot lighter. Okay. All we had to do was boil water and put them in, and they were really good freeze-dried food.
Wow, interesting. So what's the difference between an LRRP and an LRP?
Well, I like the second R in it because that meant reconnaissance. But there are LRRP teams that actually went out to cause havoc and trouble. Most of my missions were LRRP with reconnaissance in it. So our job was mainly to gather information and not try to create a fight, but to gather information and help them be able to make decisions in the back as to what was going on.
Did you have a capable FO with you?
No, I had to serve as the forward observer while we were out there. So I was the one that would call the artillery or
airstrikes too.
Yeah, we did
airstrike, gunships. Okay,
right.
That's interesting. Very.
With only 4 of us out there, our last thing that we want to do is fire a rifle because that would give your position away.
For sure, yeah.
But as we joined LRRPs, they gave us all the resources of the Army, which I was real pleased with. But we could call in gunships, artillery, even Puff the Magic Dragon, was at our disposal.
Nice. Have Puff show up on 4th of July.
Yeah.
Okay, here's one for you. Tell me about the time you were going through the jungle, your LRRP team, and you found yourself holding a handrail.
Yep. Yeah, we had been put out on a mission, and we started following this trail, and suddenly there was an incline. And as I was going up the incline, I reached over and I grabbed, and I realized I was holding onto a handrail. And while I was holding onto the handrail, it dawned on me this is not something that you normally find out in the wild in the jungle. But they'd taken some vines and wrapped them around so that it was easier to climb up this incline. And just about time I realized I was on an incline, my team member that was up in front of me stopped and he said, "Bunker." And we turned, and I turned around and looked, and we'd already walked past 2 bunkers that were in the jungle there. Fortunately for us, it was totally empty. And so we spent the rest of the day walking around, checking out all the bunkers. We checked to see if there were any booby traps or anything to make sure it was safe for us. We dug around, found the latrine, and could see that it was all dried up, that nobody had been there in quite a while. So as the day went on, we started feeling pretty comfortable in the bunker. We did find an American canned ham can where they'd opened up and eaten a ham. That was, we used to wonder where they got American goods from. Also found a box of where they'd taken playing cards with English instructions on how to play cards. So, but
Really?
found all this in the NVA camp that was there. But as the day went on, we felt pretty comfortable that nobody had been there in a while, and that we were probably all alone in that area, and got probably a little more lax than we should be. But we went back down the trail a little bit, and I found an area where there was a row of bamboo, and so we decided that we could probably set up our camp there, and we'd only be about 2 feet away from the trail, but we could hear what was going up and down the trail, but no one would be able to see us because of the bamboo. And as LRRPs, we always had rules. We would always pick our night location. Once we decided this is where we were going to stay for the night, we would normally move about 100 meters away, eat supper, and wait till just as it was getting dark. And then we'd move back to our night location and stay there in case anyone had spotted us while we were there. But this particular day, I said, well, because of that trail, I started saying, if we get over there making a lot of racket trying to set up right after dark, just right there on the trail, it started making sense to me that we could probably set up our night location a little bit early. So
let me interrupt for 1 second. We used to do that with a company. The chopper would bring in supplies. Say it's 5 o'clock and it's going to get dark at 7. We would go to a rendezvous point, get our supplies, get our mail, get our whatever, dry socks, whatever, and then wait till like 6:30, 7 o'clock when it started to get dark and move. Now we were moving the whole company, easy between 80 and 120 guys, depending on the amount of reinforcements you had. But you had 4 guys. It seemed so like easy. It just seemed so easy for 4 guys to stealthily establish a position and then move another position versus a whole company plus helicopters coming in. It's like, I guess they knew where we were, but you had better luck.
I think one of the things I liked about LRRPs after I'd been in mechanized, where we had to crank up the engines every 4 hours to keep the batteries charged and everything, I liked the stealthiness of LRRPs, that I could be out there and 4 of us with 3 other men that I trusted, and we could move easily and quietly and just, be a listening post. But this particular,
let's go back to the bamboo. I cut you off there and tell us about the.
Well, what we did was it was still about a half an hour before dark, and I decided that because of the bamboo, I said if anyone did come up the trail and we'd be sitting there trying to set up, that we'd probably make too much noise, and if anybody was going to be there, they would be on the trail, and we were pretty much hidden from the trail behind the bamboo. So we went ahead and set our poncho cover up inside the overhang of the bamboo. One of my guys sat down and started boiling some water with a little piece of C4. We used the plastic explosive, that C4. We'd roll it into about the size of a small marble, and we could light it on fire and cook with it. The only downside to it is you couldn't put it out once it started burning. So that's why we didn't use large pieces of it. We normally had one so it'd burn out pretty fast if we didn't want the flame to be seen. So, and then I decided that I would go put my claymore mine out on the trail. So I put the claymore under my armpit, and I'm walking backwards, putting the stringing the wire out so I could get to the trail. And I'm looking back at my guys. One of them suddenly said, "Sarge," kind of real quietly. I wasn't sure if I felt it or heard it, but he pointed, and I turned and looked, and here was some NVA soldiers. They weren't walking on the trail where they were supposed to be. They were off in the jungles.
They were smart.
They were walking right at me, and I dropped to my knees, And about that time is when I realized that I didn't even bring my rifle with me. And I'm looking back over there at the bamboo, and that poncho cover is flopping in the wind and looked like a giant neon sign to me, you know, saying, look here. And my other guy was wrapped himself all around the fire so that nobody could see his see the flame. And my other two guys just was watching guard. And I'm just standing there on my knees out in the open. I do have camouflage, you know, fatigues on. I felt like a little rabbit. I wasn't exactly sure at what point I was going to get up and run. And I knew I'd be seen as soon as I run to go back to get my rifle. And so I'm sitting there totally unarmed on my knees, and they get within about 30, 25 feet of me, and suddenly they turned and started going down the hill. And so I just sat there and watched about 20 NVA soldiers pass within about 20 feet of me going down the hill. But apparently they'd been going all day. Most of them had huge packs on their back. Some of them even had their rifles slung across their back. And they were just looking in the ground, huffing and puffing and moving down the hillside. I did later find out that if we'd continued down the trail, there used to be a log that crossed the stream a little bit further down the trail. And apparently we had taken out the log, and apparently they had figured out that they could take a shortcut and walk down to the stream, and you could wade across. So the reason they were leaving the trail and ended up walking out there in the jungle with me. But as soon as the last guy passed, I ran back over. We got on the radio, and as I said, we had access. Normally, before we even went out on a mission, we normally had 8 artillery points marked that we could fire with just a name, so we didn't even have to give the coordinates or anything. So I called in. They started firing artillery down in the direction where they went. And for us, we were nervous that the artillery was going to make them run back up to where we were. So in just a little bit, they sent me a gunship out to help support me. The gunship asked me to pop smoke. I told them I don't think so, because I didn't really.
Yeah, right.
I said, I know where I'm at, but I don't want anybody else to know where I'm at. We did have things that we called toys. We did have some interesting things as LRRPs. I had what was a little pin flare, and it was not much bigger than in a fountain pen, and you could pull the clip down, and it pretty much to this day I can't tell you exactly what it was, but it fired like probably a little 22 caliber round that was a tracer, and anyway it sent a little red trace shot up, and then the gunship ended up saying, "Okay, I've got you spotted." And so he ended up flying, and he ended up just hovering the gunship right above our bamboo cover, and it opened up the miniguns and just kind of fired everything that was down in front of us, probably for about a mile. But
that is interesting. Sorry, that's interesting. I never knew about that little pen flare.
Yeah. But suddenly, when he started firing those miniguns, the casing started coming out, and they ended up landing in the bamboo up our head. And we for sure thought that we were being hit by friendly fire. Listening to those miniguns, and all of a sudden hearing that stuff hit our bamboo. But after all of that, by that time it was getting dark, and we called in, and they said unless things got more serious, they didn't really want to do a night extraction. Right. So we had to stay there for the rest of the night. We didn't sleep very much. The next morning, we kind of went in the opposite direction, found us a place where we could get extracted from. We were told that they were going to send a platoon of infantry soldiers in to go in and check it out. Never did really hear what became of that.
Okay, here we're going to do some photos now. You ready for this, Warren?
Sure, let's do it.
Please describe what's going on in these photographs. Thank you. First photograph.
Yes, my LRRP unit, our home base was at Mary Lou, just outside of Kon Tum, Vietnam. And this was our sign for LRRPs. And you notice it only had the LRP, but I was an LRRP.
That's okay.
But with the 4th Infantry. But this was the sign that designated our area.
All right. So Mary Lou was the name of a LZ.
Yes.
Well, that's interesting. Never heard of that one. Okay, next one. Next picture, please.
Well, we did have some benefits as LRRPs. Just beyond that sign, we had our tents that we got to stay in between missions. We had our own bunker bar where we had some fans, and we were able to keep some ice and drinks and some nice benefits for between missions. And out in the middle, we had the volleyball court, so we were able to play volleyball and exercise that way.
Okay, wait. Bunker bar. I think we're going to change the name of this LZ bunker to LZ bunker bar. That sounds pretty good, bunker bar.
Yeah, when the donut dollies come, they'd warn us, don't take those donut dollies down to the bunker bar.
There you go. This is a photograph of actually myself slamming one down in Fuchu with B Company, 1st to the 502nd Infantry. So it looks like volleyball was pretty popular in Vietnam at the base camps. There you go. Okay, talk about this next photograph.
Oh yeah, this is when I was in mechanized infantry. So one of our LZs, this was the bathroom out there. I always like to tell people, I said, I haven't seen such scenic bathrooms since I left Vietnam. So
is that one somebody sitting on the throne?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Next photo. Is this you handsome devil?
That's me in LRRPs. This is we were one of the groups that were allowed to wear flower fatigues, and this is a tiger stripe. The RVN soldiers generally wore the tiger stripe, so this was more of a Vietnamese uniform. I carried a CAR 15 rifle with me on all my LRRP missions, which you can see me with there. It's pretty much has the same mechanics as a M16, so it just used the M16 ammo and same cartridge. But it had a collapsible butt to it, and it was sawed off on the front, not quite as big. So it was only about 2 feet long, and made it real easy to move it through the jungles. And then
yeah, maneuverable. There you go.
I also let's see if I can get this.
How about that hat up there? Yeah, what's up with that hat?
As LRRPs, this was part of our uniform, was to wear the Australian bush cap, and we took a lot of pride in our uniform.
That's the same hat?
This is the same hat, yes.
Photograph, please.
It's 50 years old. It's not quite as flexible as it used to be, but
there you go. Well, that's really nice to have that. That's a great souvenir for you.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. All right, there you go. Who's this?
Well,
who's
that's
this devil?
With my CAR 15, you can kind of see the sawed off, or it's not really sawed off, but it has a shorter barrel that's made that way. And the plastic around the barrel is round and a little bit smaller than what was on an M16. But I am wearing the flower fatigues. The Army had come out with the flower fatigues. It's kind of funny. I was in 1969 at home. I always wore pretty conservative clothing, and I was always kind of curious what people were going to think if I sent a picture home with me wearing what I said was a clown suit. You know, that I had no idea that we were going to be fashion setters for the rest of the country.
Talk about fashion. What's with that hair?
Oh yeah, it was with my dad.
What kind of outfit were you with, man? We could never have hair like that.
Yeah, well, with my dad being a master sergeant, as growing up, my hair was always a burr or a flat top.
Yeah, right.
High school. Went until I got in the Army, and I was in LRRPs, and the barbers were kind of far and few between.
That was great hair.
Let my hair grow out.
That was really good hair. Oh, you got one more picture here. All right, what's this here?
Yeah, this was in my mechanized unit. This was, I've been there about 3 months. One evening, we had, my PC was setting out on the end of the runway at LZ Bass just it was just west of I believe that's right. Just west of Khartoum. My machine gunner was on guard duty. He had an M60 right next to the APC, mounted on the ground. And he was on guard, and he yelled that he saw a trip flare. And then he said, "I see the SOB," and he fired all the rounds that we had on the 50 caliber. And then he jumped off the APC and ran over and to his M60 where he could fire. And this woke me up. I was sleeping behind the track. I jumped up and I ran over to the edge and looked down, and I could see the trip flare going off, but I couldn't see anyone. And then from LZ Bass, they started firing parachute flares for us, which would light the place up like daytime. And I never did see anyone down there. And the next thing we knew, I turned around and the APC was on fire. And it makes for a better story if we say they got hit by a B-40 rocket. But I think the truth is that one of those parachute flares ended up going down into the hatch.
Really?
And caught the ammo on fire. The thing, spectacular fire, burned all night. But every year when I start paying my taxes, I start wondering if I've paid for that APC yet.
I don't think so. Not yet. Okay. What was your concern about with the resupply? What went up in the fire?
Well, I guess I should have been concerned that I lost my track, all of our ammo, everything else. But we just been resupplied that day, and we just had new cases of beer and soda, and I had a brand new air mattress, and all of that stuff got burnt, and that was our main concern for the night.
That's how it goes, man. Good stories left and right. Okay, I love that picture of that restroom. That was really interesting.
Yes.
Tell us what happened with your friend Gibson on the first night in the field.
Well, again, I was a brand new sergeant, and we just came to Vietnam. I'd been in country for a couple of weeks because you had to go through the reception center and everything. And they finally sent us out to Mary Lou, and the tracks finally came out and picked us up, and we went through the gates, and you realize for the first time there's not any guards out there, watching over you, that you're just
you're on patrol.
Nothing but you and your rifle and the guys you're with, but between you and the enemy. And they take us out to the camp that night, and I'm introduced to all my, first, the experience of just riding that APC. In training, we always rode inside, but we called them death boxes because those B-40 rockets could hit the side and it would throw molten metal all inside. So we ended up riding on top, and there's kind of an art to riding on top of it. So I came in with my friend, Sergeant Frederick, who had been through NCO school with me. We were both sent out at the same time, and we're trying to ride on top of that APC, and we're trying to figure out how to hold our rifle and use both hands to hold on to keep from getting shaken off the track. So that it was all new. Everything was new, and a little scary, and wondering if I could really be a good sergeant to these guys out in the field. And I'm introduced to my new squad, and the very first thing they tell me is they introduced me to one of my men, Gibson. He was a big old guy. He had a fist that was probably as big as both my fists together. And they started telling me that a couple of weeks before they'd been out on patrol, and they were away from the APCs and they were out overnight. And said Gibson looked up, and there was a tiger right in his face, and he took his fist and he hit the tiger right in the jaw. He said the tiger turned around and left.
Thank you, Gibson. Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, here I am, a brand new sergeant in country, and as if I didn't have anything to worry about. You're telling me about people, that I got to worry about tigers, in Vietnam.
Okay, with that in mind, let's roll to the next friend with the tiger.
Yeah. Well, that very night, even though they knew that the tiger was in the area, a tiger did come back and actually take one of the guys away. And so this is something I'm learning my first night. Like I'm trying to make sure I can deal with the enemy. And now I'm learning we may have tigers to deal with as well.
What do you mean took him away?
Huh? Well,
what do you mean took him away?
But he just the tiger came in and killed this guy.
But where was he? On the perimeter or something? Or
Yeah, it was just a platoon, you know, that they were in a little circle
Right.
out in the
And
field.
nobody heard this?
And this was before I arrived, you know, a couple of weeks.
Oh, okay.
There,
Yeah.
but he'd come in and grabbed one of the guys and actually killed him. So my very first night there, I'm hearing about a guy getting killed by a tiger, and then my guy punched the tiger, you know, that survived.
So who are you fighting?
What's that?
Who were you fighting? The tigers or the Kong?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
beginning to wonder, you know, it's like, I don't know how I'm going to make it through a year of this.
I got something for you. At LZ Sally, we had these little bunkers. We used to our own personal bunkers. It's like building a coffin. It had sandbags on three sides, and they had some of these fence posts across the top with little Q decking, and you put sandbags on the top. So you had like a casket with the end open, and you would crawl in feet first and
Right.
go to sleep. Or head first if you want, I guess it'd be the smarter way because any shrapnel could hit your head at the end. This guy woke up with a snake on his chest and he had a heart attack and died. That was the craziest thing in the world. Yeah, that was like, there were more problems with leeches, step and a half snakes, the old bamboo viper, malaria. They had tigers. They had, these rats. The rats were the biggest cats. There was more going on in Vietnam with disease and everything else. Can't drink the water. It was crazy. Besides being shot at.
That's right. But between missions, we dealt with the rats that lived in the floor of our tent there in LRRPs.
Yeah.
And you're right. It seemed like some of them were as big as cats.
How about the kids? How about the kids used to play with the snakes?
Yeah, I've seen the Mountain Yard kids go over there. Though we had those bamboo vipers, and we were told that they were super poison. They said if one bit you, you couldn't even finish a cigarette before you'd be dead. And but I've seen the Mountain Yard kids go there and take sticks and pull them out. So they were not. The snakes didn't appear to be real aggressive, but we were afraid of them. I will tell you a quick story you haven't heard. That when I was in LRRPs, we were sitting, we'd sleep shoulder to shoulder. So all four of us, we had our feet. It was in the middle of the night, and all of a sudden we could hear the leaves rattling down at the base of our feet. And it just sounded like a snake, you know, crawling through. And the last thing that we wanted to do was turn on a light or anything when there was only four of us, and we were trying to be stealth. But it just really got to all of us that we could hear these leaves rattling, you know, just a foot away from our feet. And so one of the guys finally got up, took a match, and he leaned up there, struck a match, and for just a second, I looked down there, and it turned out it was these huge old army ants, and they were just all in a column, just walking down by our feet. But we thought for sure we had a big old snake.
All right, I got a story from, and this was not programmed, about with a mechanized unit in the rubber plantation, the Michelin rubber plantation, northwest of Cu Chi. We were up there patrolling with the 25th. And what happened, we'd be sitting on top of the APCs, and they would hit a tree, and these red ants would come down on us. I got to tell you, man, people never got naked faster than anything. Oh, yeah. They would fight you and get in your belt line, get up your armpits, and they were crazy. It was like the worst. Really, I mean, I think that was like the worst experience I had, except one, which is sad. But that was not good. Red ants, army ants in Vietnam were like not.
It was great fun if it was the other track. You know, it was fun to watch the guys.
Yeah, but yes, it's hit this little sapling, and it like shook the whole thing. Big deal, and boom, came down on it.
Those ants that fall out of the tree, they hurt too.
There you go. Okay, tell us about the bad news that you didn't hear about landing on the moon.
Well, actually, when I was on an alert mission, and we'd been out for 4 or 5 days, and we'd really gone out a pretty long ways. They told us that we only could be the 175 guns were the only things that could reach us, and we were a little nervous about that. And it would take the helicopters about 10 minutes to get to us, but we were a long ways out. and we were looking for where there at one time had been an NVA hospital, and we found the area, but it had all grown over and it didn't look like it had been used in quite a while. But sat down for a night, and we all laid down. We did hear AK-47 fire a pretty good ways away. It wasn't threatening to us, but since we were supposed to be the only friendlies in the area, we ended up having those 175 millimeter guns fire some rounds over in the direction of where the rifle fire was. And then we kind of laid down to spend the night. And when I finished my guard duty, we had to call in every hour to give them a situation report on how we were doing. And so I called in my report, and sometimes we'd give cryptic messages back and forth. And so the guy that was on the other end of the phone lived in the same bunker, or not bunker, but the same tent that I did, with all those rats that lived in the floorboard. And I'd written my parents, and they'd sent me some of these huge rat traps. And we were setting those rat traps in there, and we killed about 10 big old rats. And he had, the guy on the radio with me, he'd been helping me kill rats in our tent. And anyway, he left me a message. He said, they've landed, and just as they expected, it's made out of cheese.
Was his code?
Yeah, it was, cryptic. And I started thinking, like, I wonder what he meant by that. And I'm going like, well, we were putting cheese in those traps, and we probably killed some more rats in our tent, and I'm going like, man, this is what a giant leap for mankind,
he was trying to tell you that the United States is landing on the moon.
Yes.
What did he say again?
He said they've landed, and just as they expected, it was made out of cheese.
Oh, my
so
goodness.
had I been aware that we even had men going to the moon, I would have figured it out,
Right, gotcha.
But I went back to sleep, and the next guy was on guard duty, and at the end of his hour, he called in, and then he turned around and he woke me up and he says, "Hey, Sarge, they just told me we've landed a man on the moon."
There you go. Hey, let me ask you a question a little more serious here. You ever get ambushed while on your APCs?
We did get ambushed. That was something that was always pretty serious. One of the concerns, one of the things I liked about being in LRRPs was the stealthness, as I mentioned earlier. Those APCs, we had to keep them cranked up. Those diesel engines.
Yeah, it made a lot of noise.
It was no secret where we were and what we were doing. And even though we had a lot of firepower, and it was probably pretty scary for the enemy to approach us. They knew what they were dealing with before, they got to fight on their terms.
I got you. Okay, what's up there? What happened with this theory, but I guess turned into reality, about LRRPs becoming Rangers when getting orders to go back home?
Yes. When I first, I'd gone back into base camp, and I'd gone to some classes, and while I was there, I ended up being recruited for LRRPs. And it sounded like a good idea to me. And one of the commitments that they said is all you have to do is run missions for 6 months. And I was probably in the middle of April, so I'm going like, by the end of September, I will have finished doing all my 6 months of missions on these 4-man teams. And then they said after that, you'll still stay with the brigade LRRPs, but you'll mentor the newer guys and help them pack and, pass along tips and information, that you have from your experience.
Right.
So that sounded great to me. Well, just as I finished my 6 months, they came in and said they were disbanding the 2nd Brigade LRRPs. And I really had no idea what was going on. But Captain Street, who was in charge of the LRRPs at the time, tried to take me and one other guy, and we went to LZ Heartbreak, which was an RVN camp. And so there were only 3 U.S. soldiers there. And so I was basically the U.S. sergeant in charge of that camp. And there's some interesting stories too. That's where I got to learn to burn the poop and do everything else.
Oh yeah, kerosene water. I got you. Yeah, that was pleasant duty.
But But at that point, they finally told Captain Street that he had to go back to a combat unit, and they couldn't protect me any longer. And I was told that I needed to return to the 2nd and the 8th, where I'd come from prior to. And when they sent me back into base camp, and I started learning that the 2nd and the 8th, they were the A Company was in a big mess. Sergeant Prowl, who recommended me for
Yeah.
he was a driver in the 2nd platoon. He ended up getting very seriously wounded just a week or two before I ended up getting out. As I was preparing to go out, I found that the Shorty had been my driver in my first 4 months there. Had just been killed the week before.
Oh my goodness, you had a whole bunch of serious stuff going on.
My medic, who served with me in the 1st platoon, Doc Cressman, had gotten shot with a 51 caliber in his arm, and it was $1 million wound for him, and he got to go home. And so I was pretty upset that they were sending me back out into this mess. And while I was going back out to my unit in the jungle, the driver of the Deucenaff that I was on told me that they just got word that my unit was in contact, and we weren't sure whether we were going to be able to make it all the way out there. But as the day went on, we did make it on out there. When I finally arrived, I talked to Captain Bates, who was in charge of A Company at that point, and he told me that we were against an unknown size force, which just about drove me crazy because
that's not helpful. Yeah, it's not helpful at all.
It felt like that was information we were trying to gather for them.
Right, yeah.
To give them. And then I found out that the contact that they had made involved Sergeant Frederick, who is the guy that I came into the unit with. He took a sunken chest wound. He was carrying an M79 grenade launcher. He had a vest with grenades on, and the bullet hit one of the grenades and ricocheted into his chest and came out under his armpit. Sergeant Fox, who was still there, told me he really didn't think Frederick was going to make it. Out of the squad, the medic was wounded, and the radio guy was also killed in that same action. So three guys, including Sergeant Frederick, had just left that squad. And then as upset as I was that I even had to be out there when I thought I was not supposed to have to do any more.
Right, yeah.
Captain Bates told me that I was going to be Frederick's replacement, so I inherited a squad that had a worse day than I had. And we ended up going through several weeks still of some pretty heavy fighting in that area. On November 2nd.
Well, that draws a point. Yeah. It's amazing how sometimes you think things are going to calm down, or they are calmed down, and then all of a sudden it gets so people people are getting hit. You don't know where they're getting hit from. They're being evacuated. You're losing guys. New guys are coming in. You don't know what's going on with anything like that. But I'll tell you what. Let's get to the humble side of yourself the best we can, and tell us about the situation when you were awarded the Bronze Star.
Well, it was on November 2nd. We were told that we were going to pull out on patrol, and so I was told that my APC would be the point APC. But fortunately, at the time, we had 2 tanks that were attached to our unit, and they always went first. So I was glad that we had two APCs. From some of the things I was telling you about Barry Prowl and the things that had gone on in just the prior weeks, we had several APCs that were out of commission. And so we had a bunch of guys from 2nd platoon actually riding on the outside of the tanks. And I was following the tanks on my APC. We were suddenly the tank in front of me was hit. All I saw was a big mushroom cloud form over the tank. I couldn't imagine what it was. I was wondering, was it a 122 rocket fired right in directly into the tank. But anyway, the mushroom cloud just formed, and I saw the barrel of the tank just swerve off into one direction. And I knew we were in line next to be hit. My driver, first he turned to the right, and we started firing. I realized that was an open field and that the ambush had come from the left. So I got Franklin to turn the track back, and so we were pointed toward the direction of the ambush. And we opened up. The platoon sergeant was riding on my track that day, Sergeant Poole, and so he was behind the 50 caliber, and I was right next to him, sitting beside him. We fired our M16s till they ended up getting so hot that we called it cooking off. After the rifle gets so hot,
Right. Yeah, sure.
The bullet doesn't even chamber, the round, and so you're holding it away from you because you don't want it to explode, in your face. But just the heat, it's cooking. You don't even have to pull the trigger anymore. And the same thing.
Excuse me, I haven't heard that one in a while either. Cooking off.
Yeah.
Been a few years since I heard that.
Yeah.
You're right, though. That's it.
The platoon sergeant was firing the 50 caliber. We fired so many rounds through that. The tank appeared to be dead in front of us. The 50 caliber got to the point where the barrel was just totally red, and my driver got up and he was putting an oily rag, slapping it, trying to cool the barrel down to keep it from warping, and trying to keep it in operation. But we ended up sitting there with, I kept telling the platoon sergeant, I said, tell the captain to flank the ambush, that we needed some help from the side. And they said, well, we're getting air support. And so we were sitting there, and we were just pretty much sitting there going to be dead in the water in just a little bit. I noticed that some of the guys on the second platoon had been hurt, and I told my medic, I said, there's some guys hurt up there, and he grabbed his medical bag and he ran up to the tank, and I saw him go up there, and then he kind of disappeared. And then a little bit later, when I realized we didn't have any other rifles, I knew the guys were up there had been wounded on the tank. So I jumped off the tank. There was actually a guy on the ground right in front of our track. And I grabbed his rifle. It had love beads on it, something from the late 60s.
There you go.
And then I went on up to the tank, and we had 2 or 3 other guys that had been wounded that were just kind of hugging the side of the tank. And I grabbed like 2 more rifles, and I brought 3 rifles back to the APC, and we were able to continue firing until we got a little bit of air support.
There you go.
And then a few minutes later, the tanks actually started up, and we were able to pull out and go through the clearing. And then the captain came and told me that my medic had a small flesh wound on the side of his head, where he'd gotten hit with a round.
Right.
But he said he did. He saved the life of the tank driver and some of the guys that were on the tank, but they all got dusted off. And so we're out in the open field, and we're sitting here trying to reload all of our magazines and bring ammo back up from inside to the top, where in case we were still in danger. But it turned out to be a pretty scary Sunday morning for me. I didn't think too much more about it, but after I'd been home for about, I went home in December, and in July, my mom called me and told me, said there's someone from the reserve unit here at Herzog Field a colonel wants you to call him. And I started panicking, thinking, I said, I did 2 years active duty. We were supposed to do 4 years in active duty. We weren't supposed to have to do any other reserve duty or anything. And I'm thinking oh, what kind of paper snafu has there been? And, I've got to go back in or do something. And I was really panicking about it. And he ended up, when I finally did call him, he wanted to know if I could be out at the reserve unit on Sunday. And he said he wanted to present me with my Bronze Star with V device. I said
Very
I wasn't that I had been awarded.
Very nice.
Bronze.
Thank you.
Um,
That's very good. So
my main concern was I'd had 7 months to let my hair finally grow out, and I was beginning to look like I belonged in the 70s. I had my sideburns and everything. I asked the colonel, I said, well, can I accept it in civilian clothes? And then he asked me, he said, well, you're not proud of the uniform. And I said, well, actually, on the contrary, I said, I really want to honor the uniform, but I don't really want to get a regulation haircut again to go out and accept the. So he said, no, it'll be fine. You can accept it in civilian clothes. And so I kind of hung up at that point, and I said, I still didn't know what I'd done to deserve a Bronze Star. But my mom and dad were able to go with me and some friends. We went out, and it was presented to me.
Yeah, congratulations for that. Thank you for your service, and thank you for a great show tonight, Warren. We'll see you soon. God bless you. Talk about your website real quick.
Yes, I do have a website. It's at www. And it's my first initial W, and then my last name Gallian. .com/Vietnam. And I first wrote most of my stories for my kids, and I ended up being someone that was an early adopter of the internet, and I finally put my stories out on the internet, and it allowed me to end up getting in touch with a lot of the men.
Yeah, that's right. That's what happens. That's why we did this page. That's why my son Matthew suggested doing this. So it's www.warrengallion/Vietnam.
Yeah, it's just wgallion.com.
Wgallion. All right. W.
Initial and last name.
Wgallion/Vietnam.com.
It's .com/Vietnam.
All right. Well, it'll be on our website.
If you Google Warren Gallion Vietnam, it'll come up.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. God bless you.
All right.
Good night.
You do.
You got it. Amen. Okay, this is sound off time. We got questions or comments from any of our viewers. Let's have. Hello, sound off time. Hudson Valley Web TV. Great show. Keep up the good work, and thank you to all you veterans. Amen to the veterans. Next comment. From Wild Man Motivation. Great photos, Warren. Excellent episode. Very nice. Next, from Joe Robbie. This is what we're interested in hearing from the common soldier. Amen. We've heard the BS from the brass. The BS is in the brass. Amen, Joe. Thank you. Okay, in the 11th Cav, we called the 113's the coffin. What's that, a track? Was that APC? I'm not a mech guy. Next question. Harry, how you doing, bud? At least we didn't have the Tigers to deal with. Well, yeah, Harry, we had other. Thanks, Harry. We had some other things to deal with. Everybody had their own. Okay, Marie Kennemer. This is a great story learning. Amen to that. Thank you, sister. Lee Blanchette. I love hearing the stories that are heartbreaking but show the bravest these young kids had. You know something? You know, you're right. And yet, I'm talking this stuff and we're doing this stuff, and I'm 72 and I'm thinking like I'm 19. Yeah, like absolutely right. Bunch of kids. You see the pictures? All kids. Thank you, Lisa, for the insight. And our last one is from Deborah Kelsch. Thank you, gentlemen, for your heartfelt memories and words. You are both wonderful historians. Thank you for your service for your country. Thank you, Deborah. Appreciate it, and keep staying in touch with that Vietnam Veterans Photo Club. Okay, thank you very much for listening tonight. Going to sign off from LZ Bunker. To all my veteran friends, other veterans, family and friends, and anyone else who's watching, thank you very much. God bless you, and welcome home.